Hi everyone, welcome to our next instalment of our webinar series. And this episode we have Danny Mills, footballer and mental health advocate. Danny, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really looking forward to it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. So your journey as a player, becoming a pro, what that journey was like, and and then leading on to the mental health work that you do now.
Yeah, so I think I had quite an unconventional journey into the pro game. I was grassroots for my whole career, to be honest. Came up through Sunday league football. I joined my first team at 12 years old. So I'm originally from South London, so I grew up in Croydon, and I played for Croydon Athletic from the ages of 12 to 16. And just really enjoyed playing non-league football and grassroots football. There wasn't a seriousness to it. You could play on a Sunday, train on a weekday and forget about it. And I suppose football was always in my blood, but I never really, I guess, saw myself being a pro footballer or even earning a living out of playing. It was just fun for me, to be honest. And then at the age of 16, I wanted to do my A-levels, and at Croydon Athletic, they were starting up like an academy, which only allowed me to do like a BTEC qualification. So I ended up moving on to the rival team, Croydon FC at the time, and started my A-levels. And after my first year, I went to Crawley Town, who are now in League Two, but at the time were in the Conference, or the National League as it is now. And I suppose this is where my journey really started to kick off. I had a really good year in the youth team. I made my first team debut in the Conference at 17 years old. And things started really gaining momentum for me. I guess at this point, I still didn't really believe that I was going to be a footballer. I was applying for university. I was going down that route, really. I was going to do sports psychology, and that was really how I saw my life going, really. And at the end of my year at Crawley, I got offered a first team contract, which was £30 a week. And I decided to take the opportunity. And then that same summer that I had signed, we had a pre-season tour to Scotland, because our manager was Scottish. And at the end of that tour, he informed me that Rangers wanted to take me on trial. And, for me, I'd never really been in a professional environment before. So it was a bit like, oh my God, I'm not sure if they still have the system now in Scotland, but it was an under-19 system. So I qualified to go into sort of their under-19 system. I went on trial for 2 weeks and really enjoyed it. And when I came back to England, my life really was changing, because, Crystal Palace, Peterborough, Celtic, Rangers, all these clubs wanted to sign me all of a sudden. And I ended up signing for Peterborough on a 2-year contract in the Championship at the time, and ended up staying there for 3 years. And, during that time, I played a couple of games in the Championship. And then after my 3 years, I went back home. And I suppose my life could have gone one of two directions, really. I could have kind of forgotten about football and left it there because no one wanted me, or I could keep trying to pursue it. And, I dropped into, I went back into non-league football, and I wouldn't be talking to you now if I didn't make that decision, because my career in non-league has made me who I am. I had a better career in non-league than I did in a professional game. And the reason why I suppose one or two people within football may know me is because of what I've done in non-league and not in the professional game. And it kind of led me on to, as I'm getting older, should I say, I've looked back now and been quite lucky with what I've achieved within the game. And it's led me on to doing the more humanitarian work that I sort of find myself doing now. I look back at football and see some of the things that have happened, things that you don't realize are happening. And it's led me on to doing the mental health work now that I find myself doing now, which I'm really enjoying.
Danny, why leave Peterborough? Was it a case where you were forced to leave? Were you released and not offered another contract? And then what was that like for you as a player? Because like ultimately you made the decision that you're gonna keep pursuing it, and that takes a lot of resilience. And I think actually I mean, the timing of us also speaking to you about this is quite pertinent, because in academies we got retained release at the moment, especially next week, when we start, a lot of the clubs will start having their meetings with the young players, and it's a horrible time. I don't think it's having those conversations, particularly with say young players or any player. It's never easy. So why leave, and what made you decide, right, I'm going to kick on and I'm still going to push through? And then, obviously you then went into non-league thereafter.
So at the end of my second year, or sort of halfway through my second year contract, I was actually told that I was going to be released. I was told that I was going to be let go, and I went on loan to a non-league club. I think it was Kettering at the time, and I ended up having a really good year, or a really good 6 months, should I say. Scored quite a lot of goals, and in my head, I was playing to get a move somewhere else. So, my head was just like, let me get my head down. I've been told I'm being released. I was actually offered a pay up in the January as well to go. And not that I was on much, but they said, we'll just give you your 6 months and that's it, really. So my mentality really was, how can I continue playing football at a half decent level? And at the end of that second year, Peterborough sat down with me and said, we've had some interest in you from other clubs. Well done for your loan, and we want to offer you another year. Which, when I look back on it now, was probably just a token effort to just probably get some money out of me, for them, which I didn't realize at the time. But now that you get older, you realize these things. So it wasn't, and in my head, I was like, wow, I might actually get an opportunity. I was only maybe 20, 21. And then the same thing happened, really. I went on loan for the season, and there wasn't really a conversation after that. It was kind of like, the writing was on the wall, really. So no one really officially actually told me that I was going to be released in the third year. It was just kind of like, I was on loan for the season, and then that was it. Like, I remember I just left, to be honest. That was it. And after that, I like I said, I came to a crossroads, and I wanted to still try and stay in the Football League if I could, as most young players would have done. So I went on trial with Notts County, who were in League One at the time. I went on trial at Southend, who were in League Two at the time, I think. And I was just really being messed around. And at quite a young age, I said to myself, I'm never going on trial again. At 21, I said, I'm not doing it. I'm not going on trial anywhere else ever again. That was my mentality. So I got my head down. I was working hard in the gym, and I said, I'm just going to go to a non-league club and just play games and just try and enjoy football. And I got a call from one of my old PE teachers who was a coach at Carshalton. And he said to me, would you like to just play some games within the reserves? So I had gone from playing probably 60, 70 games in the National League on loan to now playing in the reserves of a Ryman Premier team. So that was quite a culture shock for me, but nothing that I wasn't used to. I'd always been non-league through and through. So it wasn't as if I'd been in the Premier League my whole career or the Championship my whole career, like through academy. I've known non-league my whole life. I played a few games, and then the first team manager wanted me to come and play for him. I'd done well there, and then I moved on to Whitehawk, which is where I made my name. That's where I played for 5-6 years, became a name within sort of the National League South, and kicked on from there.
How do you get to a place, like mentally, where you were fixed on, I don't want to go on any more trials, and then that's it, and then you kind of you affirm in that decision? But if you're a young player and you've got this dream, and especially if you've been in the system since you were like 8-9 years old, let's say, I'm thinking about young players who are coming in from pre-academy. All they know is that club. go through a journey. They're kept. Now all of a sudden, they're not kept, and they still believe, that they've got this dream, haven't they? So and too right, you're going to have you have an ambition, and you still have the belief that you want to kick on with that. But you were so firm mentally that I do not want to go on any more trials, and you went down the non-league route, and you've made a good name for yourself, and had a decent career as well. But what advice, I guess, if we got players listening in, or people who are thinking, even in other career pathways, that you need to mentally get yourself ready, don't you?
Yeah.
How did that work for you in terms of that mental preparation?
So I think the difference between me and a player that's come through the system is the fact that they've actually come through a system, and that's all they've known. They've been in that professional environment. Now, you obviously work at a professional club and are in that environment. It's very different to a non-league environment. So they are pampered. I'm just comparing it to non-league. They're absolutely pampered. The facilities are second to none, world-class facilities. Of course, you're going to want to stay in that system. Of course, you're going to want to do everything you can to be a part of that, because non-league is kind of the enemy. Non-league is not serious. Non-league is dog and duck, Mickey Mouse football. That's what players think. That's their mentality. And they think, if I go into non-league, I'm not going to make it. That's me, done. I came through non-league. So I think that was the difference in terms of my mentality. I actually, and I think about it now, I was against the pro game after that. I said, forget the pro game. Non-league's my home. Non-league's my family. Non-league is where I not necessarily belong, because I always believed that I could play more in the football league, definitely. But in my head, it was like, do you know what? You can keep your football league. You can keep your pro. I'm going to do my thing in non-league and show that I can do well. And I've always kept that mentality. Always, even, I'm 30 next month, and I've still kept that mentality. And people have asked me, they said, you've done so well within non-league. Do you ever wish, or do you feel that you could have or should have had the opportunity to play higher? I said, of course I believe that I could have played higher. But one thing that I was never going to do is I was never going to go on trial to a team. And I've had opportunities to say, do you want to just come in for a few weeks? I said, no, you can keep that. You can keep your trial, keep your week. If you want me, you want me. If you don't, you don't. And I suppose I've always had that sort of love-hate with the pro game in that sense, because I've always believed if you're good enough, someone should take you. And if you've got the credentials, and I'm a striker, so all I've got to go on is my goals. That's all I've got to go on. And I've always done that. I've always scored the goals. So for me, it was like, well, I scored 35 goals this year. Why am I coming in to train with you? Or, I've had a hell of a season. And that's the way I look at it. And but my advice for the younger players that have maybe come through the system is, ultimately, and we say it all the time, you have to be playing football. It's no good you being at these pro clubs, trialing at these pro clubs, and just sitting on a bench or playing under 23 football. It's all nonsense. You need to be playing first team football, or be in an environment where you're in and around the first team. Now, these are just my own personal opinions and my own thoughts, of course. But for me, for these players to progress, they need to drop into non-league. I've said it a lot where I believe that as part of academy education, they need to go on loan to non-league clubs. They need to see what it's like to play for 3 points, to pay for your mortgage, to pay for your bills. They need to see how cutthroat it can be. They need to see real men grafting and trying to pay their bills. Do they get that within the academy? You'll probably be better placed to let me know if that happens, because I'm not in it, and I haven't coached in it, and I haven't been in it. I've only been in non-league. But from my conversations with people that have come through that system and young players that I've played with, from what they've said anyway, that education hasn't been there, and they've always shied away from non-league.
So I'll equally be biased, as you know. So with our play, so Chris Ramsey is very good. Andrew Impey as well, Paul Hall, the guys who really deal with the top end. So I think with the introduction of the B team, it's still part of our whole development program. And that's what I like with the way that Chris, you know, and the way that that is seen is the B team is not an entity on its own, and the B team is not a mini first team. It is part of this holistic development program to, exactly like you said, to provide players with the tools that they need to manage in those first team environments. Because if we're saying that our whole philosophy at the club that Chris has put in place from the under nines right the way up is about developing adaptable players, that adaptability is also about managing in a range of environments. So a lot of some of the older players will go out on loan to non-league clubs. I only know QPR because that's the only pro club I've ever worked at, so I don't have another experience to compare to. But certainly in my experience with Chris and Hawley and what I see is that our older ones go on loan to non-league clubs. With the introduction of the B team, you've got B team games against non-league clubs. And it's part of this holistic education program for players. And I think the key thing is that the B team is not a mini first team. It's not that. It's still part of this holistic development program. And we understand that they're on the cusp of the B team because you're going to have, on the cusp of the first team, because you're going to have some first team players dipping into the B team and vice versa. Yeah. But it should be, you know, there is that winning element. So when I'm saying about, well, it's part of the development program, what I mean is that it is competitive. There is that, you know, there is that element, like you said, about, you know, got to get the 3 points and that type of thing. But it's not a first team, and it's not an entity on its own. It's actually part of this whole development program, which goes back to what you said, that you need to allow players to be put in these environments to see how they manage, because that is about developing adversity skills, you know, being resilient, and that type of thing. But like I said, I've only got this one experience. I don't know what other clubs do, but I can imagine, like you said there, that it's beneficial for the lads. And certainly, you know, them ones who go out on loan and then come back, they are seeing it as, well, hold on, I've gone out and I've played men's football, so I deserve to be in the B team or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? That because it is very different to 23s or 21s football. You know, the context, the dynamics of it's going to be very different. But I think that whole experience should be part and parcel of what an academy gives to a player, because they need to leave with these broad sense of skills, don't they?
Absolutely. And like I said, I've played with a lot of young players that have come from those types of clubs. We had a player from QPR a few years ago come on loan from Welling. We had a young boy come from Millwall as well. And it just, their progression and where they are now just speaks for itself. The young lad from Millwall was called Danny McNamara. And he came to us for about a month or two. And funny enough, we actually played them in a friendly, like the under 23s in a friendly. And I pointed him out to my manager and said, he's good, you know, just because of his aggression, his mannerisms, the way he was. Ability wise, was he the best player on the pitch? Probably not. But I said to him, I said to our manager, he could play for us though. Those other ones couldn't play for us. He came on loan and now he's playing in Millwall's first team. And it didn't come as a surprise to me whatsoever, because he went on loan to a National League side, came back, then he went to Scotland, played for St. Johnstone's. I said, I'm not surprised. And you know, the other day I saw him playing on TV and I was so proud of him, because I said, you know what, I knew that kid was going to do well just because of the way he was. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and I think that adds part of his development. Him coming on loan has given him that opportunity. I think if he stayed there, he would have been released. So yeah, like you said, it is a holistic view. I think it's about mentality as well, though. There's so many players that I've dropped into non-league or come into non-league where they still have that mentality as if they're still within those pro clubs. They're hanging on for dear life. Every minute they want to talk about what they've done last year or the year before. I was at Tottenham or I was at this club. They're coming with their wash bags under their hand. I'm not interested in any of that. And I'm probably showing my age now, but I'm not interested in any of that. You're here now. Yes, you were there for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. None of that matters. It actually doesn't matter. You need to get your head down and you need to work here now. And some fall by the wayside and some don't. I have this banter every pre-season with a group of players. You always play a Premier League side or a Championship side in pre-season, under 23 side. And I said, you look at some of the body language and the attitudes of the players that you're playing against. And look, more time the young boys, they're all right. But you always get that minority who are, a little bit big time, think they're better than what they are, bowling around the non-league ground. And I always say in our dressing room, I said, in 2 months, they'll be here on loan. And in 2 months, they'll be on the bench here on loan as well. So don't be intimidated by people like that. Don't be intimidated just because they've got a Crystal Palace tracksuit on, or they're driving a nice car. Doesn't mean anything. They're going to get released in a year. And I always say that every year. Every year I'll say that. And more time, players will come on loan into that division. You'll see them on the bench, division. You'll see them in the stands. So, like I said, I think it's about preparing them mentally for after they leave. Because as we know, how many players in that 23s are going to play in that first team? How many players are going to get in there? 1, maybe 2, if you're lucky.
Danny, I'm just going to jump in there. Go back to, when you were talking about your career, you was at Peterborough. The moment I know now looking back on your career, it's probably easier to look back on it and reflect on the moments. But when you were told you were going to be released for the first time, and you've been playing at Peterborough a couple of years, how does that affect you mentally? I know you're saying that with yourself, you seem to have a strong mindset and you bounced back from it and you've made a great career from there. How does it affect you mentally, or how would it affect somebody with maybe not so strong of a mindset?
It's hard, man. And even back then it was hard. I'd be lying to you if I said, because I was only 19, 20. When I got the move, I thought, wow, this is it, man. I'm in the Championship. I'm probably going to be here for the rest of my career. As an 18-year-old kid, that's what you're thinking, And as much as I have a strong mentality now, and I probably did back then, I'm not the man I'm not the man now that I was then at 18, 19. So back then, it did hit me hard. I said, I've only been here 18 months and they want to get rid of me. What was the point in signing me in the first place? That was my mentality. I was like, why not just leave me in non-league? Let me get on with it. I'm fine. I was fine there. But now you've given me this carrot. You've dangled this carrot in front of me and it's like you've just taken it away. So that was, my head was just like, I would have been more than happy to stay where I am and hopefully do well. But having said that, if I didn't go, I wouldn't have been able to play the amount of first team games I did in that conference anyway, because being at Crawley, if I'd have stayed at Crawley, I wouldn't have played like the amount of games I would have played. So it's a little bit of a catch-22, if you will. For players that do get released, it's difficult, man. As Manisha said, it's the hardest conversation to have with players. And it's the hardest thing for a player to take, because what it is that, well, for players that have been in the system for their whole careers, football is actually your identity, and it's your only identity. People know you as the footballer. People know you as the guy that plays football. So when that's taken away from you, you have a conflict in yourself. You think, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? I'm not the football guy anymore. I'm not the guy that comes home from a match in a tracksuit and everyone's like, oh, how you doing? This and that. Like, that's what ends up happening. But I think, like I said, that education through the system needs to happen for them to be prepared. I was fine. In terms of going back, I was fine in the sense I worked before I turned pro. I was working in Clark's shoe shop for a year. I was working in Matalan for a year on tills. I actually lived normal life. But for these kids, it is difficult. And I completely understand that. I'd never come from a place of ignorance and say, well, why are you, just because of my own experience? I can imagine it's hard. And I would have been exactly the same if I was in the system.
Just touching up on what you just spoke about. You said you were known, most footballers, when they make it, they're known as the footballer. So it's almost like the identity. When, did you feel at any point that you were losing that, or did you have anything else as well that you can say that I'm not just a footballer, I am whatever else you are, so whatever else you're doing, so did you have more to your identity than just footballer? And how, if there is anyone out there who's kind of struggling through that, is there any words of wisdom that you can give to them as well to overcome that?
It's a very good question. I was always known as the guy that does play football. Was I known as the footballer? Probably as well. But for me, like I said, I had lived normal life. I was in sixth form. I was working. I was doing all of this before so my identity was a bit more than that, than just playing football. When I had obviously turned pro, yes, now I was the footballer. Dan's gone and Dan's made it type thing. That's the mentality people have, don't they? They think you're on all this money and all that. Wasn't the case. But for me, my motto now, and I think more so in recent years, is that I say I am more than just a footballer. I think there are so many things about me that people wouldn't know or don't know, even though football has been what I do. But now, my mentality, like I said, I was a personal trainer for 6-7 years. When I left playing football, I went to work in Evan Cycles, the bike shop. I didn't want to do that. But my mentality was headstrong, where I'd worked before, so it wasn't really a thing for me. It was like, I need to get some extra money while I'm playing. I've started doing the coaching, but I feel as players, and I think I've said this to Manisha, and I've said this to other people, is that as players and as footballers, and even now playing, you are pigeonholed. You are put in a box, and that box consists of football. And when you're finished football, it might look like, okay, are you going to maybe coach after? Or more so the pro game's a little bit different, because you have the PFA, which they give you some guidance on things that you can do. But during your journey as a footballer and during your career, you don't really have that. I don't think you're not really focused on that. It's only when you really get a bit older. But my advice to people and players is that you are more than just a footballer. Football isn't 100% of who you are, because there's so much more that you can do. Football, yes, is a massive part of our lives, but you can be a personal trainer, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be whatever you want to be. Especially within this country, there's so many opportunities that we're very lucky and fortunate to have. And I think that's something that now going forward and over the last few years, I've consistently tried to preach and promote, is that there's more to life than what we do here now. Because when we retire at 35, 36, we've got a lot of living to do after that.
A great point about you got a lot of living to do after that. It's knowing what to do next. And you spoke about it, having don't just have the identity as I'm the footballer. You need to have other things to help you along that journey, don't you? Absolutely,
you do. I've made it my business over the last few years to really just try and get as much information, as many qualifications as possible, to speak to as many different people within the industry and out of the industry. COVID has been a hard time for all of us. People have lost loved ones, people have lost jobs, people have been put on furlough. And I think what I've done during this period is I've tried to really make the most of it as best you can. That's consisted of a lot of learning and self-investment and self-development. I've done an equality and diversity course. I'm doing a mental health awareness course now. I've done my mental health campaign. I'd love to go. I've applied, to go on my A license, and I've spoken to people that I never thought I would have spoken to in my life. Really, I've spoken to Troy Townsend from Kick It Out, Tony Burnett, the CEO of Kick It Out. A lot of doors have opened over this year, and it's even more so given me more of a fire in my belly to want to do more within the game, but not necessarily be a coach or anything like that. It's just to have an influence on the game, be in those boardrooms, be in those decision-making roles. And I'm trying to do everything that I can to make it happen.
Yeah, it's really inspiring. I think there's going to be so many people that will take so many different things from what you've said. Do you know, Danny, I want to go back to what you said about, you know, you didn't want to go on trial. Your thing was, I don't want to go on trial, but I want to put it in the context of like almost like a work experience type. So player goes on loan, they're on work experience because they are experience another place of work. And that's no different to people who might be in other jobs and volunteer. So if I think about myself, or I know, like, you know, like Sabrina, you know, people who volunteered, and those opportunities have come up through volunteering. Now, had I not volunteered, although I had an opportunity where I met Chris, funny enough, at Troy Townsend's Kick It Out event, but me being in the club all the time, Chris wouldn't have actually seen perhaps some of the potential that I have to be developed, and we wouldn't have built that rapport over the 3 months that I was volunteering there. So how, I understand, you know, that you're saying your thing was right, you're good, you were scoring all the goals and that type of thing, and that's why you were so adamant that now I don't want to go out on trial, just take me in. But how does it not, is that the same, or does it differ? Because I had my B license, I would have been equally qualified as any other academy coach. Be it that I had never been in the professional game before, I'd not been a player, you know, when I was growing up. So I'll be 41 this year, and when I was growing up, women's football didn't even exist, you know, let alone being South Asian and playing football. So playing for me was never going to be in my pathway, and at best it was going to be Sunday league, which only got better when I was in my early 30s, because then you're actually getting coached, you know. So coaching was then an easy transition for me, because I was a former deputy head. I trained as a primary school teacher, and I had experience in education. Now I understand that I'm still on a journey in terms of developing as a coach, and I get that the professional game, you know, it is different to what I was used to. But is that not the same though? Could I not have said, well, what do you mean I've got to come in and volunteer? What? And I was doing 8 hours. I was doing 8 hours 3 times a week of volunteering. I probably clocked up about 180 hours of volunteering at the club before I even got a look in, when Chris said to me, yeah, you know, I'm going to take you on as the assistant for the under-9s in my first season. Is that not the same?
In my, everything that I say is obviously in my own personal opinion and from my own personal experiences. So to maybe add some context to maybe why I didn't want to go on trial anymore was mainly because of the way that I was treated when I was on the trials. So you're really seen more as just of a number rather than actually someone that's of value to them. And I came away from that at both clubs, and that's nothing against those clubs, to be honest, at the time. But that's just the way I personally felt. Would I tell a player not to go on trial? Absolutely, I wouldn't say that to them. I'd say if there's opportunities there that you feel is right for you, then go for it. My personal opinion and the way I felt was that I'm just not going to do that again because of my experiences, and also as well because I'm playing every week and enjoying myself and scoring. I'm loving what I'm doing. Okay, I can come on trial and you actually might sign me. But am I going to play? In 6 months' time, when you're tired of me, or a year when you're tired of me, how are you going to treat me then? Now, I know it's all hypothetical and ifs, buts and maybes, but I'm happy with, you know, I'm generally happy playing football in non-league. And, you know, we always say, oh, you just need to enjoy your football. Well, I'm enjoying my football. So what should I, you know, what more should I do? I'm enjoying myself. I've got a nice balance. I'm working, I'm playing week in, week out, I'm scoring goals. And now you want to take me and put me in an environment where you're probably not going to play me because you want me to come on trial. Because if you do really want me, you just take me, wouldn't you? So I look at it like that. And I'd like to think that, you know, over the years, you start to wisen up and you get intelligent and you start seeing things. And I saw a lot of things. I saw people going on trial. Yeah, you're going on trial all over the country. Nothing's happening. Yeah, you're getting a deal for a year. Then you're getting released. Then you're getting a deal for a year. Then you're getting released. Then you're getting a deal. 6 months later, you're going alone. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. You can keep it all. I just want to be happI want to have a nice work-life balance. I want to enjoy my football. I want to go home. I don't want any of the nonsense in between it. And like I said, I've been lucky enough where, look, I'm still the one I've had to go out there. I've had to put in the performances. I've had to score the goals. But I earned the right to do what I wanted to do. And I earned the right to stay where I am and play and enjoy. Like I said, I think with other players that are maybe chasing, I think that's when it becomes a problem. So I've seen players where it's like, I just need to be a pro. I need to be playing full time. And I get it. But my thing is, you just need to be happy playing football. You're going all over the place, like dragging yourself all over the place for free, by the way. You're going on trial, you're going all over the country for free. No one's paying you to do none of this. And I know some people might look at it and say, well, it's part of the journey and it's a part of this. Yes, I get it. But I've seen just way too many stories of the same thing happening. Way too many. But like I said, it's not that I would ever deter anyone from going on trial. You know, I've spoken to players at the club now and said, look, if an opportunity maybe comes for you in the Football League, you might have to, you know, maybe go there for a couple of weeks. What have you got to lose type thing? Do you know what I mean? So my advice is different to different players. So for someone of the same age, I've said, I don't think you should go on trial. And to someone else, I've said, I think you should go on trial. Because their situations are slightly different, where one has played, he's played 40 games. Why are you going on trial? You've been the best in league for a position. You're better than that. Whereas the other player done okay, opportunity maybe comes to go in. It's like, well, maybe you see how it goes. Do you know what I mean? See how it goes. But in the back of your mind, you still need to be thinking, you still need to be playing more games.
Yeah, do you know, you made a great point about, I think individuals are different, where they come from and where they are in their journey is different. And your advice, like you said, will be determined by that. The other thing you made a really good point about as well is the fact that it's how you're made to feel and if the opportunity is right for you. And I think that, you know, in any walk of life, in any job, that's really, really important. So as much as, and we know, you know, football as a whole is such a competitive industry, or sport, you know, sport and exercise, very competitive. There are so many people that want to work in elite sport, so many.
Yeah.
And I think at times maybe now a little bit saturated with qualified people and not enough jobs, and definitely not enough jobs at like the elite game or the pro game, because you know there just aren't any. Yeah. And so it's if the opportunity is right for you, and like you said, it's you got to look at where are you on your journey and your pathway, and the most important thing is you will start recognizing yourself, how you are made to feel. You know, are you taken advantage of? Is it just come in and you know that, you know, it's a needs must. You're going to come in and you're going to learn. And I guess, you know, what you've been saying there is very much about that. It's kind of also for that person, look yourself and search as to whether you feel it's right for you, whether you feel there is a real opportunity to grow and learn, or, you know, whether you feel, no, hold on a minute, I'm not really sure about this.
Yeah, definitely. Everything's all personal. And one thing that I'd never do, or that I don't do, is my opinions, I try not to use that to influence other people, because at the end of the day, their own personal situation is always going to be different to what mine was. And they need to do ultimately they need to make the decision. I can give my thoughts on what I feel, but at the end of the day, for me, it's about, you know, you do what you feel is right for you at the time. If you want to go there, or you want to sign for that club, or you want to go and try at that club, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. You know, you've got to go through these experiences yourself and that will shape you, and that does shape you.
Danny, you mentioned earlier you do a bit of mental health work. Do you want to just touch on that and share with us what you do?
Yeah, so when our season came to a stop in February, due to the financial aspects of what COVID has brought, unfortunately, to football, I got thinking about, you know, what can I do? What more can I do? You know, I've put myself in a position within non-league and where I can have some sort of an influence. I can have some sort of a platform where I can maybe reach out to people. so I had this idea of bringing together two clubs, Whitehawk, who I made my name at for 5 years, and Dulwich Hamlet, who I play for currently. Both clubs share similar values and very inclusive clubs, very big advocates for, you know, anti-racism, etc., inclusive to the LGBTQ community, everything. So I wanted to do something around mental health because over the years, I've seen the effects that it has. And especially within the last year or two, I've seen players go through some real hardships mentally, battling their minds, really in a battle with their minds. And I thought, what can I do? And with the help of, you know, the great people at both clubs, I put together and organized this campaign called the Shout Out for Mental Health campaign, where we done a series of events over the month of February and a little bit in March, where we had a virtual football match, we had a fans quiz, we had a radio show, a TV show, and we rounded it up with a sort of a special evening with myself, where I got former teammates to have a conversation around mental health. And initially, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give the fans something to be happy about. I wanted to give the fans something to look forward to. They weren't in the stadiums, they weren't at the games, and to give people an insight to what they don't see, because as we know, your Joe Bloggs football fan that works Monday to Friday 9 to 5, he only sees what happens at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. He only sees what happens at 7:45 on a Tuesday night. That's a very small part of football, and Manisha will tell you that it's a very small part of football is the games, even though it's the main part. It's a very small part of it, trust me, because you're in that environment more than you're on that pitch playing the games. And there's so much that happens. And I wanted to bring that to light. And I wanted to show people and tell people that this is what happens within the game. At first, I felt a little bit, not nervous, but I wasn't sure, because you can rub some people up the wrong way when you do things like this within football, because there are a lot of things that are going on which are not right, a lot of things that are not spoken about. But again, as an older player now, for me, it's the right time. And I've said a lot that one day I'm going to write a book about all these experiences. One day I'm going to speak about my experiences within the non-league game. And you know, the campaign was such a big success. We raised over £3,000 for the Mind charity, and we gave half to the Brighton Mind, where Whitehawk are based, and we gave half to the Lambeth and Suffolk Mind. And we're hoping to do a physical, real pre-season charity match in the summer, which would be absolutely brilliant if we could do something like that. If not this year, then next year, whenever we can have fans. But I'm also working with Mind on another project where we are working with young men, teenagers, providing them with coaching sessions, and offering them free school meals as well, or free meals at the end of that session. And during those sessions, we have a theme. So the theme might be effective communication, for example. We will then base that session around effective communication. And at the end of that session, we will have a conversation about how can we use effective communication within the real world. You know, these are children that come from disadvantaged backgrounds, some hardships, and that's been really inspiring for me to do. It's been really engaging, because a lot of these youths look like me. I look like them. I grew up in South London. They grew up in South London. We've done the same nonsense growing up. I've done the same nonsense growing up. So for me now, it's about giving back as much as I can, trying to give as much wisdom and knowledge and everything that I've learned. And I've still got a lot of learning. I don't know it all. I've still got so much learning to do, which I'm looking forward to doing, and passing on those life lessons.
Danny, like you've been brilliant. There's so many things that I think you know, people will take from what you've said, like lots of knowledge, lots of experience, a range of experience, and we'll look forward to reading your book eventually when you do write it and it gets published, because I'm sure you know it, and I think it's needed. Like you said, there's a lot in that journey that that you've spoken about, and I'm sure that we could have probably carried on for another, another hour or so. But the luck with all the work that you're doing, and anything we can do to support, just let us know. But we'll definitely be looking out for, your continued journey and your work around equality and mental health.
No, definitely. Thank you very much for having me. These conversations can last for hours and hours and hours, which is good. And like I said, I just hope that, whoever watches, and, they can always reach out to myself. And like I said, hopefully one day I'll be in a position where I'll be able to get these things down on paper and share it with the football community.
Danny, before you go, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, so at 2DannyMills9. I've just done it a few months ago. I'm still quite new to it, to be honest. So it's a professional account, so everything that I put up will be the work that I'm doing, everything football related. There's like I said, there's a few things that I'm doing at the moment in the work, so they'll be able to see that on there. And as it stands, hopefully I'll be back at Dulwich next year. I don't know we don't know what's going to happen in general with football. It's all up in the air. But if not at Dulwich, I'll be somewhere playing, and you'll always be able to see me somewhere, I'm sure.